I've talked about my experiences with Cedar Point as a whole, but I purposefully left out the big guns, the epic lineup that is the coasters of Cedar Point, the coaster collection that we all can't shut up about, and the reason we visit. I've had different experiences on all of these rides. Epic, terrible, average, and everything in between. So let's dive in to part 2 of my experiences with Cedar Point and talk strictly coasters. So arms down, head back, and hold on, because these are my takes and opinions of the coasters of Cedar Point. So before I start talking about the rides, let's get one thing straight. That's more confusing than it needs to be, and it's just ugly. All of the coasters have different policies on loose items. A lot of them have you get lockers or leave them with a non-rider, which is a bad. Off the top of my head, Millennium Force, Magnum, might have at one point, Gatekeeper, Dragster. But here's why it's confusing, because others have normal bins on the platform, like Raptor, Corkscrew, and Maverick. Then you get the two oddball ones, Valraven and I believe Rougarou with its bins for shoes and only shoes. I might be wrong on Rougarou, so let me know in the comments. As for Steel Vengeance, I've heard this changes from year to year, so I don't know what it currently is. But from a personal experience, for my one ride in 2020, it was lockers or a non-rider, so let us know in the comments below. So on my first visit in 2012, the first ride that I ever went on at the Point, Top Thrill Dragster, the world's first Stratocoaster. I've never been on anything that fast, intense, and well, short in my life. It's something you need to experience at least once. That 120 mile per hour launch up the 420 foot top hat is just something you need to experience. The whip coming down that spiral. It's a great ride, but there's so many other amazing ones in this park. Hopefully Cedar Point decides to keep this thing for the long haul, and it'll reopen in 2023. Next up, Maverick. This one's grown on me over the years, partly because of my wife, but Maverick is an epic Intamin Blitz coaster. The ride has gotten better and better to me over the years since my first ride. Add the change to the vest restraints a few years back, and I've liked it more. The LSM lift hill, the 95-degree drop, the whippy inversions, the ejector airtime, and a second launch. It's got a little bit of everything. My only complaint is sometimes the landings off those twists and hills can be not so graceful to the body, but it's worth any minor discomfort. It's an epic ride to me. Next up, Gatekeeper. This was the first new coaster added to the park since my first visit, as well as my first wing coaster. I made an effort to get back to the park to ride this thing the following year. My first ride, front row, pouring rain, painful, but I made sure to open my eyes to get in all of that near collision moments of the keyholes. I love the wing over drop. That's my second favorite element on this thing. The keyholes are definitely number one. I love the pot, a floater over the airtime hill, and the way this thing just glides. Many less painful rides later, don't sleep on this. In my opinion, it's a solid supporting coaster here, but would be a standout anywhere else. Next up, Valraven. I can remember when they started building this thing, and they had those vending machines that gave you cards. They could have anything from discounted merch, a free one-time fast lane, or even a free ticket to come back next year and ride this thing when it was opened. You can guess which tickets I got from it. They hyped this one big. People like to hate on this ride. I disagree, and I really enjoy this one. You get so many different sensations on it. First, the hold before that 90-degree drop with that view. Then, you get the airtime off that drop like it's hyper. The massive inversions. The hang time off the 0G roll. The pop of airtime on the final speed hill. This was the other big coaster I got to hit on my 2020 trip. And the last coaster I've ridden at Cedar Point to this date. It's got a bit of everything. I'm so puzzled how you can't like this thing. Gemini. I don't hear people talk about this one a lot, but it's one that I try to hit almost every time I visit. The racing coaster's just a lot of fun. Airtime filled, and the chance to high-five people on the other train, and who doesn't like racing to see who wins? Competitive in nature. And also, that solid helix at the end. Not to mention, for an older Aero, it's smooth. It's not the biggest, fastest, or even the most thrilling, but it's still always a fun ride every time. Don't skip it. Magnum XL 200. I have a love-hate relationship with this thing. I've had rides with epic ejector airtime. I've had other ones where it was just boring and rough. You can't deny the impact the original Hypercoaster has though. I haven't ridden this thing since either 2015 or 2016, so I'm definitely due for a re-ride, and hopefully that'll clear my feelings about this one. I like it, but I think I could love it. I really need that re-ride. Corkscrew. I've ridden Corkscrew twice, once in 2012 and again in 2020. It was my second ride after Dragster in 2012, and I hated it. It felt rough and, well, meh after Dragster, but I shouldn't have held that against it. Fast forward to 2020, where it was again the second ride of the day, and it was smooth and surprisingly fun. Not as good as some of the other Aero Loopers, but good for what it is. Cedar Creek Mine Ride. It's a good family coaster. Couldn't tell you the last time I was on it. Very well might have been my first trip. So I don't have much to say about this family mine train. It does its job. What more could you ask for? Blue Streak. I've ridden this thing once, and I honestly can't remember much of it other than riding it, and it being the best of the two wooden coasters at the park at the time. We'll work on a re-ride next visit, but can't guarantee it as a priority. Raptor. This is my third favorite invert, only behind Banshee at Kings Island and Great Bear at Hershey Park. It's got a lot of positive G's, lots of snappy inversions, the corkscrews, the cobra roll, the loop, and lots of laterals and an insane sense of speed. I haven't been on this ride since 2016, so I'm definitely due for some re-rides. Iron Dragon. I like this Aero suspended coaster. It's definitely on the milder side compared to others, but it's fun for the whole family. The best part is that ending finale over the water. I was fortunate enough to try this ride with VR when parks were crazy with that fad. I liked the VR, and yes, it involved flying on the back of a dragon. I wish they would have kept this option. It's a good family coaster, and a good in-between, or if you're just trying to go on something for the heck of it kind of ride. So with any great park, some things have to close to make way for the new. I've seen a few in my travels to the point, so here's my take on some gone, but not forgotten coasters of Cedar Point. Disaster Transport. Thanks to Screamscape, I knew going into my first trip I'd only have one trip to get any rides on this and its neighbor, the Space Spiral. This bobsled coaster in the dark was a Space Mountain knockoff. I got at least maybe 3 or 4 rides on it. I enjoyed this ride. It was my first bobsled coaster, and while I liked it, we got a hell of a lot better replacement. Going slightly up the midway, we have the recently deceased Wicked Twister, the only impulse coaster to go over the 200-foot mark. I did enjoy this coaster, and that launch was intense as hell, and the whip you got on those spikes, this will be missed by those who enjoyed it. However, I'm curious to see what ends up in that big space now that they have this and the old arena cleaned up. Definitely a good sized plot for something big in the future. Mantis. While technically still there, only reborn, this was my first stand-up coaster. While I did think it was neat and intense, especially on your legs, and, well, how you'd get crushed into that bike seat, you guys know what I mean. However, this was transformed into the floorless coaster Rougarou, which I really enjoy. While it is nothing compared to Hydra, Dominator, or Kraken, it's still a solid floorless. So much more enjoyable. Great sense of speed with the low-to-the-ground elements in the second half. The pre-drop turnaround always throws a pop of airtime that leads into that first drop. Such a great supporting coaster. I'm glad they found a way to keep it. Mean Streak. Mean Streak. But Mean Streak. All I can say about this one is that it hurt. It made Predator at Darien Lake seem glossy smooth. Thank God for RMC and what they did with this piece of crap. It was a mean streak and needed to go alright, but it didn't. It came back with a vengeance. A steel vengeance. I got one ride on this for my off visit in 2020. I knew going into that day, any plans for getting on things would get thrown out the window. But there was no way in hell I was missing this one. All the hype I had heard about it. I was losing my RMC virginity by hell or high water. And damn, it was worth the hell it was to ride. Man, this is so much better than Mean Streak. Obviously. The cons to my experience all have to deal with the 2020 operating procedures. Starting with the line access tickets, and we still waited forever. We thought it was going to act like a fast pass time entry. Boy, we were wrong. Also, the amount of times they ran this thing empty to dry the train was ridiculous. I can say this since I visited Kings Island that same year and they just dried it with rags and loaded it all in one. So that added to the wait. Other than that, and the odd loose article policy. So, what about the actual ride? It was an insane ride. And those mid-course brake runs? What mid-course brake runs? Yeah, they were off, so this thing hauled through the layout. It was intense. I don't think I've ever had a coaster try to yeet me out of it like this thing. I hope to get more Ray rides on this thing in the future. It's definitely an elite coaster. I personally can't give it a true spot in my personal rankings list without a few more rides. One ride just doesn't give it a proper idea from personal experiences with other coasters. So what about that big monster that Cedar Point is known the world over for? The coaster that was the best in the world till Carowinds built Fury 325. The original Giga Coaster, Millennium Force. I owe this ride a lot, practically my soul. For one, and most importantly, this ride is one of the first things that my wife and I had in common and talked about it a lot. So I owe my relationship, marriage, and a lot of where my life is now partly due to this blue beast. So Millie, thank you. So how about a first impression ride? Well, since it was the last ride of the day, on the day I visited in 2012, we got a turn to right in the middle since it was the shortest, and the rain shut it down. They said we could wait it out and they tried to get us on. Well, we waited. Then we got the go-ahead and got loaded in. What an experience. Night ride. Light rain. First time. My mind was blown. It was the best coaster I had ever ridden up to that point and I was hooked. I was so shocked to find out the next day touring Dinosaurs Alive, RIP, to see we were mere feet from a T-Rex's face at 90 miles per hour. Wow. This ride is the real deal. Hype and all. Insane first drop. Positive G's on the overbank turns. Airtime hills. And that speed hill by the station, my personal favorite. It's the whole package. This is my second favorite Giga, only to Leviathan. And I've ridden all 5 of the ones at the Cedar Fair parks. However, I will say I do owe Fury some re-rides because it's been 7 long years. So that could change, but I will never forget that first ride on Millennium Force. You couldn't ask for a better one. I feel like I just scratched the surface on my visits, the coasters, and the park as a whole. Not to mention the other attractions in Sandusky. So it's safe to say there will be a follow-up in the future. So how do I sum up Cedar Point? Well, it's something you just have to visit for yourself. It's, in my opinion, the park with the best coaster collection. However, it's not my favorite park to visit. That one is one of its sister parks, and a topic for another day. So if you enjoyed this video, give us a like and comment down below about your Cedar Point experiences. Also, consider subscribing to the channel for more park content. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you in the parks.